Blessings, everyone, and welcome to Heart to Heart. Today I'm outside in the beautiful outdoors. It's a really nice day out here. It's quiet and peaceful, and I thought it was a perfect setting for today's topic. Today's topic is, I can't say one of my favorites because they're all my favorite, but it's a very good, close to first favorite. And it has to do with forgiving ourselves. We have to forgive ourselves as often as we forgive other people. It's really easy to forgive someone else if they have said something to us or have done something to us. Sometimes it can be pretty easy to just forgive them because we don't have to accept responsibility or accountability for their actions. But when it comes to forgiving ourselves, it's not quite that easy. Lots of times we accept responsibility and accountability for things that were done to us or said to us just because no one did accept accountability. And so in our minds, by accepting accountability, it's almost like acknowledging that something terrible did happen. But the flaw in that is that we don't resolve it. And so it remains an unresolved bad deed or bad word or an impact of victimization where someone did something bad to you. And just to have it acknowledged, you almost accept the responsibility for it. So what happens when we keep accepting responsibility and blaming ourselves for things that have happened to us in our past that were, hard on us? It builds up. And while we may not show it on the outside, it still carries with us on the inside. Now, the reason why this is such a favorite topic for me is because it was the hardest for me to do. Not so much the act of forgiving myself, but accepting that I hadn't forgiven myself for things, accepting that I had taken on, so to speak, some of these ill wills that happened to me or that I was maybe a witness to during my lifetime, and I kind of accepted the responsibility for them. And so again, for me, accepting that I hadn't forgiven myself was what was hardest for me. In order to accept that, you almost have to go back through your memory and think about everything that has happened to you or anything that you did or intentionally or otherwise to someone else that may have harmed them. And you have to, go back and not just say, yes, I accept accountability for it, but what could I have done to change it? Sometimes things that happen to us in our past are really traumatic and they cause such a physical reaction within us that we're unable to shake it. We're unable to shake that memory. And the memory of it is what gets imprinted in us, and we carry that throughout all of our relationships. So that is almost like one of the biggest barriers. I think up there with self-love, you have to forgive yourself. If someone did something to you and they never made amends for it or never even acknowledged it, you have to forgive yourself for your part of it, for either being part of it or for holding on to it as long as you have held on to it. If you did something, say you had a relationship that broke up and the result was the kids, if you had kids or pets, weren't able to be with you as much as you would have liked them to, and you carry this sense of guilt, let that go. When we hold on to things like that, it keeps us in the past. It keeps us from being present and accepting and acknowledging the lessons that we learned from things that hurt us. If you're able to forgive those things, then you're able to move on, and it helps you to improve your relationships looking forward. When you're unable to forgive, you're unable to move forward. It keeps you at that point of fear. Whatever it is that you felt physically at that time is what you continue to feel as you go forward, and that's how you know whether or not you've forgiven yourself. If you still feel the same physical sensation, that same terror or shame or whatever it was that you felt at the time, powerlessness, or that feeling of anger, whatever it was that you were feeling, if you feel it every time you remember it, then you have not forgiven yourself for it. You have not let it go. One of the ways that I was able to forgive myself for some things, because what I had found is that being the person that I am, I want accountability for everything that goes wrong. And lots of times, because I see things happen or I'm a part of something, I feel like, oh, I got that. I know what that's all about. I can always, think my way through it. But it didn't necessarily mean that I forgave myself. And so that was the disconnect. While I thought I was operating at 100, I probably was more at like a 85, 90% in terms of forgiving myself. A lot of the things I was holding on to, I wasn't even aware that I was holding on to them until it was one day I was speaking with a close friend of mine, and here I thought I was recounting my tales of heroism, but as I was talking about them, the sensation, the emotions still gripped me. And, I began to cry as I was, telling some of the stories. And she turned to me and she says, "You've got to forgive yourself." And it was as if she had thrown a boot at my head. I'm like, wait a minute. I know what that's all about. I know about forgiving. But I had never made the connection and the association with myself. And as I said, the connection with the emotion, the fact that I still felt the same sensation is what let me know that I hadn't forgiven myself. And a lot of the things that I hadn't forgiven myself for weren't even things that I was responsible for. Yes, I might have been witness to, I might have even been victim of. But sometimes things happen and I just accepted the responsibility, as I said, because I'm that person. I'm the one that wants to make everything right. And I was taking it on in a detrimental way. It was definitely not beneficial and definitely kept me, like I said, at 85%, 90% instead of 100%. And for me, it was like, wow, how can that be? It was such a contradiction. So I wanted to work through it, and I wanted to make sure that I was at 100% forgiveness with myself so that I can move forward. And so some of the ways that I found to do that were, one way in particular was the most creative, and I think the most fun, and was the one that put me over the edge and helped me to actually forgive myself for a lot of the things that happened. The thing that you have to do is find a quiet spot, and you want to sit down, and you want to try and think of some of the things that you've done that you know weren't right, either that you said to someone or that you may have done, and also think of some things that might have happened that you almost had no choice but to be a part of. Like, like I said, if it was a relationship and the relationship wasn't working right and you had children, you didn't necessarily want to divorce yourself from your children, but as a side effect, you had to. So things like that, think of things like that as well. And as you're thinking of these things, you want to think of ways that now, because you're in the present, whether or not you're still feeling in the past, you're very much in the present, and you have the benefit of that experience and others to make corrections. What would you do to make it different if you could go back in that time? And in your mind, you want to replay it, and replay it with your solutions. It doesn't change the fact that it happened, but it changes how your mind now remembers it. If you can almost rewrite it. For me, like I said, the most creative way, I used one of my most traumatic memories that I was holding on to that, I didn't do, but it was done to me. And my intention was to go back and respin it, and turn into this fabulous superhero, and the costume and everything. And as I was preparing to rewrite it, somewhere along the line something comical happened, because of course I'm not that same person now that I was back then. So my thought processes are completely different. And as I went to try and rewrite the memory in my mind, I either tripped and fell or something happened really funny and caused me to laugh, and I almost lost the sensation, that fear and that anger. I had lost it for a second, and I said, wait a minute, let me go back, let me try and do it again. And every time I went back to try to rewrite it, it just got funnier and funnier till I just actually lost the whole sentiment altogether. And I just said, that's not going to work. Let me try something else. But what I had discovered was that I actually let go of the emotion of the fear of it. I let go of the anger of it. And so when I went back to remember it, it didn't grip me the same way. And I was able to, to separate, so to speak, from that emotion. And yet it's still there. The memory and the experience and the lesson of it is still in me, but the terror of it had been gone. So I said, hey, I might be onto something. So I started going back over things that, like I said, that I remembered that I might have said that wasn't right, and I corrected it in a way that I would do it now, because I have developed into a different woman. So I went back and I did all of those, and I said, great, I did it. And I accomplished my goal. I forgave myself 100%. But no, I hadn't. Because there were some things that I was holding on to that I wasn't even aware I was holding on to. And those are the things that caused me to cry as I was retelling them, or that caused my heart to increase in speed as I was remembering them, or anything that caused me to break out in a sweat or just make me just feel dreadful. Those are the things that I hadn't quite remembered on my conscious mind, but were still somehow buried in me. So then I said I had to figure out a way to forgive those things, because they were holding me back. I could now feel the difference. I could feel the difference of, in my psyche. So I set about trying to figure out how I would almost rewrite those memories too, without having to know them. So what I did was I sat down in a quiet space. I closed my eyes, and I tried to go back in my memory through my childhood. I reversed myself all the way back to the earliest memory that I had, and those that I didn't have, I replaced almost automatically with pictures that I had seen, or stories that I have heard, and I put myself back in those times. And as I was going back, I was saying I forgive anything that happened to me at this time. And what I started to feel was that different memories, my heart rate would increase, and like I would get like a little terror feeling, but I didn't let go of it. You have to work through the sensation of it. You have to feel the terror. You have to terrify yourself in a way to let it go. And what you want to do is grip yourself so that you remind your mind that you're in the present, that you're present, that you're right here, that you're not in the past. Because some of these memories are so deeply ingrained in us that, like I said, just the fact that you remember them transports you almost back to that moment. But what you got to remember is that you're not. You're here. And so hold on to yourself, and just remind yourself that you're here, that it's today, and work yourself until you can calm yourself back down and continue with the memory, but in a calmer state of mind. And so I did that. I went all the way back. I took it back to birth, really. Just based off of things that I had heard, things that I had seen, pictures that I had. And I almost erased just about all of those negative emotions and feelings that were attributed and connected to my childhood. And even as I got older and became an adult, anything negative or, just not that I was a part of, that I wouldn't be a part of now, I corrected it, so to speak, and I forgave myself simply by saying I forgive myself for any part that I had in it. I forgive myself for, anything that I held on to for too long, and I let it go. I released the feelings and I released the emotions. And I know it sounds really idealistic, but it really works. And the bottom line is to forgive yourself, whatever it's going to take. Some people can make a list. I was going to go back to my list. Some people make a list of things that were, that they may have said to others or that they may have done. And then on the other side of it, you can write, what would you do now? Because you have to remember that a lot of the things that happened in our past, we had only limited experiences to go by. We only had limited information. And we did the best we could at the time. And that's all that one can, expect to do. Like I said, it's so much easier to forgive others, but it's harder to forgive ourselves because we hold ourselves accountable to a almost higher standard. And, in order to do that, we have to not accept that we can be wrong. And as I said, it's a contradiction. We can be wrong. We're people, we're human. No one is perfect. No one is going to do everything right. And even at your highest frequency, you may still offend or hurt someone or do something wrong, but you know that your intention wasn't there. And so you forgive yourself, you learn from it, and you move on. So, again, forgive yourself. If you haven't spent enough time with your children and you live right around the corner or even in another state and you feel bad or guilty about it, you don't have to. You can move forward. Reach out to them now. You live now. Clearly, if you're listening and watching my video, then you're alive. And you can make it better. If you didn't take that class that you said you were going to take and you feel like had you taken it, your whole life would have been different, you can still take the class. The thing about it is that now there's so many things online that you almost have no excuse. There's no excuses for anything anymore. If someone did something to you, and harmed you deeply emotionally, you can forgive them. You don't have to forget, and you don't have to be around them, but forgive them, let it go so that you can have the benefit of the lesson to move on and open yourself up to more people and more experiences. The more you hold on to, the more you hold yourself back. If you said something to someone and you didn't really mean it, write a letter of apology, or just even to yourself, apologize for saying it, for being that person. Maybe you were going through something and you weren't feeling very charitable with your words or your actions, and it's okay. We're human. We're allowed to feel the way that we feel at different times, but what we don't want to do is hold on to the guilt of it. Some guilt is healthy, and some guilt can keep you moving in the right direction, but you don't want to hold on to it to a point where it's making you sick, where it's making you depressed, where it's making you close off from people because you become guilt-ridden, or you don't want to make any decision because you haven't forgiven yourself for the decisions that you made when you were like 12. You were 12 years old. You had a 12-year-old mind, even if it was 18 or whatever the age was. You've got to forgive yourself so that you can now make decisions. People don't realize how much it really does hold you back. Like I said, it could be something so slight as that. You made a decision and it didn't pan out very well. So now anytime you're faced with a decision, you get that terror, and either you procrastinate or you do the complete opposite just because you don't want to deal with those emotions. And so that's what the forgiving is about, letting go of the feelings so that you're free yourself to move forward in today. So I hope that was helpful and clear. Like I said, that was a life changer for me. With everything that I know and with everything that I do, the hardest was for me to accept that there were still some things that I was holding on to consciously and subconsciously that I didn't really need to be holding on to. And now I can honestly say that I am at 100%. I am open to whatever life has to bring me. That's what it's all about. So again, thank you for watching, and blessings.